Last night, Fox News became a battleground as White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt clashed with late-night host Stephen Colbert in a fiery showdown. Colbert's vicious attack on Trump's marriage and Leavitt's role ignited a storm, but Leavitt's bold counter left him reeling. The studio lights burned hot, casting sharp shadows across the sleek Fox News set. Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary, sat poised, her blonde hair catching the glare, her expression steely. Across from her, Stephen Colbert, the 60-year-old late-night comedian, leaned forward, his trademark smirk barely masking a glint of disdain. The host, Bret Baier, introduced the segment with a measured tone, but the air crackled with tension from the start. This was no ordinary interview. It was a confrontation years in the making, fueled by Colbert's public loathing for Donald Trump and Leavitt's unyielding loyalty to him. Colbert wasted no time. "Let's talk about your boss," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Donald Trump, the man who's turned the White House into a reality show. His marriage to Melania? A sham. Everyone knows it's a business deal, not a love story. She's barely seen with him, probably because she can't stand his ego. I mean, who could? The guy's a walking caricature, and you're out here defending his circus." The audience gasped, a mix of boos and scattered applause rippling through the studio. Colbert's words were a calculated grenade, lobbed not just at Trump, but at the woman tasked with defending him. Leavitt's jaw tightened, but her eyes never left Colbert. She didn't flinch. Baier tried to steer the conversation, but Colbert was relentless. "And you, Karoline," he continued, turning his attack on her. "You're just a puppet, aren't you? A 27-year-old mouthpiece for a 78-year-old narcissist. What's it like to wake up every day knowing your job is to spin lies for a man who doesn't even know your name half the time?" His voice was sharp, meant to cut, to belittle. He leaned back, arms crossed, as if daring her to respond. The studio fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavy. Leavitt's youth and inexperience were his target, a way to dismiss her as insignificant in the shadow of Trump's larger-than-life persona. But Leavitt was no novice. She'd faced hostile rooms before, and she wasn't about to let Colbert's condescension unravel her. "Stephen," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel, "you're wrong. About President Trump, about his marriage, and about me. Let's start with the marriage. Donald and Melania Trump have been together for 20 years, through relentless attacks from people like you who'd rather tear down than build up. Their bond is stronger than your cheap shots. I've seen them together, and I know the respect they have for each other. You're peddling gossip, not facts." Her words were deliberate, each one landing like a counterpunch. The audience stirred, some nodding in approval. She leaned forward, her gaze locked on Colbert. "As for me being a puppet, I'm here because I believe in the American people, not because I'm chasing a paycheck or a laugh track. Can you say the same?" The jab was subtle but pointed, and Colbert's smirk faltered for a split second. Baier raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift. Leavitt wasn't just defending herself, she was setting the stage for something bigger. The atmosphere in the studio thickened, the crowd sensing a fight that was only beginning to unfold. Colbert recovered, quickly, his eyes narrowing. "Oh, please," he scoffed. "You're deflecting. This is about Trump's failures, not my career. You can't polish that man's record, Karoline. His policies, his chaos, it's all a disaster." But Leavitt wasn't done. She tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You want to talk about records, Stephen? Let's talk about yours. How about the millions you've made? By turning your show into a political weapon, swaying public opinion for the highest bidder. Should we dig into that?" The accusation hung in the air, sharp and unexpected. Colbert's face froze, his confidence cracking just enough to notice. What did she know? The crowd murmured, and Baier's eyes darted between them. Leavitt had just dropped a bomb, and the fallout was coming. The Fox News stage pulsed with raw energy, the crowd's murmurs swelling into a restless hum. Stephen Colbert's polished veneer had cracked, his eyes flickering with unease as Karoline Leavitt's accusation lingered like smoke. Her words, millions made, political weapon, highest bidder, had struck a nerve, and the studio felt like a powder keg. Bret Baier, sensing the moment, leaned forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "Those are serious claims, Karoline. Care to elaborate?" Leavitt's expression didn't waver, her composure a stark contrast to Colbert's twitching jaw. "Gladly, Bret," she said, her tone steady but laced with intent. "Stephen's built an empire on his late-night pulpit, hasn't he? Every night, millions tune in for his jokes. But it's not just comedy. It's a machine, carefully crafted to shape narratives, to vilify one side while propping up the other. And who's paying for it? Networks, sponsors, political operatives. Who knows Stephen's audience will eat it up? He's not just a host, he's a hired gun." The crowd erupted, some cheering, others jeering, as the weight of her words sank in. Colbert's face reddened, his hands gripping the armrests. "That's absurd," he snapped, his voice rising. "You're reaching, Karoline. My show's about truth, not propaganda. Unlike your boss, I don't dodge accountability. Trump's record, his tax cuts for billionaires, his border chaos, his COVID mishandling, speaks for itself. You're out here accusing me to distract from his mess." His words were sharp, but there was a tremor in his delivery, a hint of desperation. The audience sensed it, their noise dipping as they waited for Leavitt's response. She didn't miss a beat. "Truth, Stephen? Let's talk about your truth," she said, her voice cutting like a blade. "In 2020, your show ran segment after segment pushing a certain candidate, didn't it? Night after night, you framed the election like a morality play. And surprise, your network's parent company had ties to that candidate's donors. Coincidence? Or was it a deal? You've never disclosed how much those connections padded your bank account." The accusation was a gut punch, specific enough to sting, vague enough to haunt. The crowd gasped, and Baier's eyebrows shot up. Colbert's mouth opened, then closed, his usual quick wit failing him. "You're making this up," Colbert finally spat, his voice hoarse. "You have no proof. This is what Trump does. Throw mud and hope it sticks. You're just his echo." But the denial sounded weak, and Leavitt pounced. "No proof? The public's not as blind as you think, Stephen. Your viewers might laugh at your jokes, but they're starting to see the strings. You've been cashing checks from people who want elections swayed, and you've done it while hiding behind a smile. That's not comedy. That's betrayal." Her words were relentless, each one chipping away at Colbert's armor. The studio was electric, the audience hanging on every syllable. Colbert leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "You're a child playing at politics," he hissed, his voice low but venomous. "You think you can come here, throw baseless claims and what? Take me down? I've been in this game longer than you've been alive. You're nothing without Trump's name behind you." The personal attack was meant to wound, to reduce her to the puppet he'd called her earlier. The crowd stirred, some booing Colbert's venom, others shouting support for Leavitt. Baier raised a hand, trying to regain control, but the confrontation was spiraling. Leavitt's eyes flashed, but her voice stayed even. "You're wrong again, Stephen. I'm here for the American people, not just one man. And they're tired of being manipulated by people like you, who think a laugh track makes you untouchable. You want to talk about my age? Fine. I'm young, enough to see through your game and old enough to call it out." The crowd roared, her defiance igniting them. Colbert's face twisted, his composure unraveling as he realized she wasn't backing down. He opened his mouth to retort, but Leavitt wasn't finished. "You've spent years hiding your deals in plain sight," she said, her voice rising. "But tonight, the mask is slipping. What else are you hiding, Stephen?" The question hung, like a guillotine, and Colbert's silence was deafening. The studio held its breath, waiting for the next blow. The air in the Fox News studio was thick with anticipation, the crowd's roar fading into a taut silence as Karoline Leavitt's question, "What else are you hiding?" echoed like a challenge. Stephen Colbert's face was a mask of barely contained fury. His hands clenched on the table, his usual charm replaced by a raw, defensive edge. The young press secretary had turned the tables, and the veteran host was scrambling. Bret Baier, his voice steady but urgent, seized the moment. "Stephen, that's a heavy accusation. Do you have a response?" All eyes locked on Colbert, whose silence stretched a beat too long. Finally he spoke, his voice low and biting. "This is a witch hunt," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "You're throwing out conspiracies with nothing to back them up, Karoline. It's pathetic. You're desperate to protect Trump, so you're inventing stories about me. Let's stay on topic. Your boss's failures. His trade wars tanked farmers. His rallies spread division. His marriage? A publicity stunt. You can't defend that, so you're attacking me instead." The crowd stirred, some jeering, others cheering his deflection. But his words lacked their earlier bite, and Leavitt's unyielding stare made it clear she wasn't rattled. She tilted her head, her voice calm but piercing. "Deflection won't save you, Stephen. You call it a conspiracy? I call it a pattern. Your show's been a megaphone for certain interests for years. In 2018, you ran weeks of segments trashing a tax reform bill, never mentioning your network's parent company stood to lose millions if it passed. Funny how that worked out. Or how about 2022, when you mocked a candidate's energy plan while your producers cozied up to green energy lobbyists? You're not just a comedian. You're a player in a game most of your viewers don't even see." The accusation was surgical, each detail sharpening the blade. The audience gasped, and Baier's pen froze mid-note. Colbert's eyes widened, a flicker of panic breaking through. "You're lying," he snapped, his voice cracking. "You're making this up to smear me. My show's about holding power to account, not playing your dirty political games." But the denial sounded hollow, and the crowd's murmurs grew, louder, skeptical. Leavitt pressed on, undeterred. "Holding power to account? Is that what you call it when you take meetings with political strategists before your monologues? Or when your jokes align perfectly with the talking points of the people signing your checks? You've been steering public opinion for profit, Stephen, and you've done it while pretending to be the everyman." Her words were relentless, each one landing like a hammer. The studio was alive with tension, the audience split between shock and exhilaration. Colbert slammed his hand on the table, his composure shattering. "Enough," he shouted, his face flushed. "You're a nobody, Karoline. A glorified intern who thinks she can lecture me. I've been exposing hypocrites like Trump for decades. You're out of your league." The personal attack was vicious, meant to humiliate, to remind her of her youth and inexperience. The crowd erupted, some booing Colbert's outburst, others shouting Leavitt's name. Baier raised his voice, trying to restore order, but the chaos only fueled the confrontation. Leavitt didn't blink. "You're angry, Stephen, because I'm right," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the noise. "You can call me names, but it doesn't change the truth. I'm here for the American people, not for fame or fortune. Can you say the same? Or are you too busy cashing checks from the elites you claim to mock?" The crowd roared, her defiance electrifying the room. Colbert's jaw tightened, his eyes burning with rage, but he couldn't find the words to counter. Baier glanced at the clock, sensing the segment was spiraling beyond control. Leavitt leaned forward, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "You've built a career on tearing people down, Stephen. But tonight, you're the one exposed. What happens when your audience starts asking questions? When they dig into your deals? You can't laugh that off." The threat was palpable, a promise of consequences. Colbert's face paled, his hands trembling slightly. The studio was a tinderbox, and Leavitt had just struck another match. The crowd held its breath, waiting for his next move, as the confrontation teetered on the edge of explosion. The Fox News set was a cauldron of raw emotion, the crowd's restless energy crackling as Karoline Leavitt's whispered threat hung in the air. Stephen Colbert, his face drained of color, sat rigid, his trembling hands betraying the storm within. Her words, about his audience digging into his deals, had sliced through his defenses, leaving him exposed under the studio's unforgiving lights. Bret Baier, his voice tight, tried to steer the chaos. "Stephen, Karoline's raised some pointed allegations. Do you want to address them?" The question was a lifeline, but Colbert's eyes burned with a mix of fear and fury, his usual wit buried under the weight of the moment. He forced a brittle smile, his voice shaking as he spoke. "This is a circus," he said, his tone sharp but unsteady. Karoline's spinning fantasies to dodge the real issue, Trump's disasters, his marriage to Melania, a hollow contract, his leadership, a wrecking ball. She's here accusing me of nonsense because she can't defend him. It's sad, really. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others booing, but his deflection lacked conviction. His attack on Trump felt recycled, a weak attempt to regain footing. Leavitt's unyielding gaze told him she wasn't done. She leaned back, her voice steady and cold. "You're repeating yourself, Stephen, because you're scared," she said, each word deliberate. "You can't laugh off the truth forever. Let's talk specifics. In 2021, your show pushed a narrative about a certain infrastructure bill, framing it as a betrayal of the working class. Oddly, you never mentioned the consulting firm tied to your network, the one that got a 7-figure contract to lobby against that bill. Your jokes swayed millions, and that firm cashed in. Just a coincidence, right?" The accusation was a dagger, precise and damning. The audience gasped, and Baier's eyes widened, his notepad forgotten. Colbert's face twisted, his voice rising to a near shout. "You're fabricating this," he snapped, slamming his fist on the table. "You're a liar, Karoline, and a bad one. I don't take orders from anyone. My show's about calling out frauds like Trump, not playing your conspiracies." But his outburst only fueled the tension, his desperation palpable. The crowd was divided, some shouting support for Leavitt, others heckling her, the studio teetering on chaos. Baier raised a hand, but the confrontation was a runaway train. Leavitt didn't flinch. "You're unraveling, Stephen," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "The American people see it. You've spent years hiding behind your desk using humor to mask your motives. But the truth is, you've sold your platform to the highest bidder. Lobbyists, donors, whoever pays. You call Trump a fraud? Look in the mirror." Her words were relentless, each one stripping away Colbert's facade. The crowd roared, her defiance igniting them. Some chanted her name, others jeered, but the momentum was hers. Colbert's eyes blazed, his composure in tatters. "You're a child," he shouted, his voice raw. "You think you can come here, throw around lies and ruin me? I'm Stephen Colbert. I've faced bigger threats than you, and I'm still standing." The personal attack was a last-ditch effort, meant to crush her spirit, but it backfired. The crowd's boos drowned out his words, their support for Leavitt swelling. Baier struggled to regain control, his voice lost in the uproar. Leavitt's eyes narrowed, her voice rising with quiet power. "You're not standing, Stephen. You're sinking," she said, her words a slow burn. "I'm not here to ruin you. You've done that yourself. I'm here for the people who trusted you, who deserve to know who's been pulling your strings. You've betrayed them for profit, and no amount of shouting changes that." The crowd erupted, her words striking a chord. Colbert's hands shook, his face a mask of rage and panic. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The studio was a pressure cooker, and Leavitt had turned up the heat. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Keep shouting, Stephen. It won't stop what's coming. Your secrets are unraveling, and the world's watching. What's next? Another deal you can't explain? Another lie you can't laugh off? The question was a final blow, sharp and unyielding. Colbert's eyes darted to the crowd, then to Baier, searching for an escape. The studio held its breath, the confrontation poised to explode into something irreversible. The Fox News studio was a furnace of tension. The crowd's collective breath held as Karoline Leavitt's final words cut through the air like a blade. Stephen Colbert, his eyes wild with desperation, gripped the edge of the table, his search for an escape yielding nothing. Her accusation, another deal, another lie, had stripped him bare, and the audience's restless energy pulsed with anticipation. Bret Baier, his face taut, tried to intervene. "We're running out of time," he said, his voice strained. "Stephen, final response." But the moment was beyond control, the confrontation barreling toward its climax. Colbert's voice trembled, with rage as he leaned forward, his face inches from Leavitt's. "You're nothing," he hissed, his words venomous. "A nobody trying to tear me down with lies. You think you've won? You're just Trump's lapdog, and everyone here knows it. His marriage is a joke. His presidency was a disaster, and you're a fool for defending him." The attack was personal, vicious, a last attempt to claw back dominance. The crowd erupted, boos and cheers colliding in a chaotic roar. But Leavitt's expression didn't waver, her calm resolve a stark contrast to Colbert's unraveling. She sat back, her voice steady and commanding. "You're done, Stephen," she said, each word a hammer strike. "You can insult me, but you can't hide the truth. Let's end this with facts. In 2023, your show ran a series of segments attacking a judicial nominee, painting her as corrupt. You never disclosed that your network's parent company was bankrolled by a group with a vested interest in blocking her confirmation. That group paid millions, and your jokes did their dirty work. You've been a mouthpiece for power, not a voice for the people." The accusation was devastating, precise, and the crowd gasped, their murmurs swelling into shouts. Baier's jaw dropped, his attempt at moderation forgotten. Colbert's face crumpled, his voice rising to a frantic shout. "This is slander," he bellowed, slamming both hands on the table. "I'm not your scapegoat. You're making this up to save Trump's skin. You're pathetic." But his words were drowned out by the crowd's uproar, their boos overwhelming. His protests. Leavitt's calm pierced the chaos. "The truth isn't slander, Stephen," she said, her voice rising with conviction. "I'm here for the American people, who deserve better than your lies. You've used your platform to manipulate them, to line your pockets while pretending to be their hero. That ends tonight." The crowd roared, her words igniting a wave of support. Chants of her name echoed through the studio. Colbert's eyes darted frantically, his composure shattered. "You don't get to judge me," he screamed, his voice hoarse. "I've fought for what's right. You're just a kid playing at power." The personal jab was desperate, but it only fueled the crowd's disdain. Leavitt leaned forward, her voice a quiet, unyielding force. "I'm not judging you, Stephen. Your actions are. The American people trusted you, and you betrayed them for profit. You mocked Trump's marriage, his leadership, but you're the one who's been living a lie. I stand with the people, not the elites you serve." The crowd exploded, their cheers deafening, her defiance a rallying cry. Colbert's hands shook, his face a mask of fury and defeat. He shoved his chair back, the screech of metal cutting through the noise. "I'm done with this," he spat, ripping off his mic. "You're a disgrace, and so is this network." He stormed off the set, his footsteps echoing as the crowd booed and cheered in equal measure. Baier called after him, but Colbert was gone, his exit a final admission of defeat. The studio was electric, the air charged with Leavitt's triumph. Leavitt sat back, her expression serene but resolute. Baier, scrambling to close the segment, turned to her. Karoline, any final words? She looked directly into the camera, her voice clear. I'm here for the truth, for the people. No one's above accountability. Not me, not Trump, not Stephen. Let's keep asking questions. The crowd erupted in applause, her words sealing her victory. The studio lights dimmed, but Leavitt's presence lingered, a new force cemented. Outside, social media ignited, her name trending as a conservative icon while Colbert's reputation faced a reckoning. The confrontation was over, and Leavitt had won.